I looked at my ticket and I realised it was for the day before. So I had that panic of, will I be able to get out? Will I be able to come back? And I got to the front of the queue and a very stern-looking Qantas employee looked at me. I explained what happened. She ripped the ticket out of my hand, disappeared.
Virtual CEO. Oh, but that's extraordinary. Mind-blowing.
I did ask my DVC, I was like, but are you at risk of being taken over by a virtual DVC? So, which is, he said no. I think it's the chaos of Delhi that I love, and the streets are always alive. And I think it's that hustle that there's always people, and you kind of see all these people on their little journey.
G'day and welcome to the Global Horizons podcast. I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming to you today from Ngunnawal country in Canberra. And I'm super excited about today's conversation because this gentleman, I've seen his name for many years. He's got an awesome reputation, but I've never had the chance to meet him. So this is something new and special for me, and I hope it is for you too. Tom Gifford, welcome to Global Horizons.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited. Good to finally meet you.
It's super.
I've heard your podcast many a time, but great to meet you in person.
It is great to meet you, mate. And I'm really looking forward to this chat. Maybe by background, because I don't really know your backstory. How did you end up here? I'm not necessarily here at this conference, but here in Australia and doing what you do.
Yeah, so I've lived here now over 20 years, but I did the very typical thing. Grew up in the UK, grew up in Birmingham, moved away from home to a small city in the UK called Winchester, finished my degree, and of course, like many of the Brits, wanted to come and explore Australia. So flew over when I was 22 with about £1,000 in my bank account and a backpack, and landed in Sydney, did bar work, worked my way around the East Coast and absolutely loved it. And then I spent the final 6 months working and living in Melbourne. I was on a 1-year working holiday visa. And I think about that time and how naive I was. And I had such a great time. And I remember one day thinking, okay, my 1 year is about to expire. So I found the local, I think it was DIMIA office then, the Department of Multicultural Affairs.
One of their iterations.
Yep. And I went in, pressed the button, and they kind of looked at me very sternly, and they were like, what do you want? And I said, I love your beautiful country. I'd like you to extend my visa for another 6 months so I can see more of it. I got sternly told to leave the office and that my visa was expiring and it couldn't be extended. So I was like, okay. Then I went into the Qantas office many times, and then this was in 2002, so it was a little while ago, and tried to kept changing my flights. Anyway, I worked out the last day I could remain in Australia on my visa. Thought I had my flight booked on the same day and arrived on the airport on that last day before leaving Australia. My visa was expiring that day. It was like an 11 p.m. flight, so it was pretty much the last flight I could get out of Australia. And as I was queuing up at the desk to check in onto my flight, I looked at my ticket and I realised it was for the day before. So I had that panic of, will I be able to get out? Will I ever be able to come back? And I got to the front of the queue and a very stern-looking Qantas employee looked at me. I explained what happened. She ripped the ticket out of my hand, disappeared, and then came back about 5 minutes later with a brand new ticket. And I was on the next flight out. So I was lucky to get out of Australia without breaching my visa. And from that point on, always wanted to come back.
Isn't that funny? Because just that moment, that one person deciding to accommodate you, because maybe if you'd overstayed and then you would have the black mark, and then whenever you came back, maybe that was it, right? Far out.
And I often think about that now and whether you would get the same service now or the same luck. And I'm also now that person that double checks my flight about 20 times, gets to the airport super early. Yeah, I'm extra cautious when it comes to booking flights and airports.
Where did you bounce to next? Was that back home to England and then?
Yeah, so then I went back home, went back to my hometown, then moved to London, then moved to Adelaide. So my partner, who I met when I moved back to the UK, was in the police. And then the police were recruiting UK cops in Adelaide. So that was our journey back to Adelaide. So we spent time when we were in the UK, then going to Australia House to do all of our medicals, visa checks. And then, we got our kind of ticket over to Australia via Adelaide. And that was where I eventually landed into this industry, but I did many different jobs before that. So
Like what? Like what?
I think probably one of my most rewarding was I worked for a small organisation who would go out into the APY Lands, so the remote parts of South Australia, and help young Indigenous kids train for employment opportunities there. So we used to go in a big truck for 2 weeks at a time, where we would drive up from Adelaide, past Port Augusta, for those of you that know South Australia, past a little town called Marla, and then we would drive into 6 different remote communities.
Left or right side of the road as you're heading north? Or
Left.
Left side.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And we would be there for 2 weeks at a time. And essentially, young kids were being trained, getting ready for civil engineering roles, because there's a bit of mining activity up in that part of the world. And my role was kind of helping with some of those soft skills. So how do we get kids that haven't worked before just in a position where they're in a good place to find work? So I felt very lucky doing that, because I don't think there's many people even that are Australian have actually spent time in that beautiful part of the world.
Can you describe the landscape?
Yeah. In fact, when you ask me to describe the landscape, that's a really interesting question, because the second time I went, I had to drive so we would normally drive up to Marla and essentially turn left. And there's another time where I had to fly to Alice Springs. That's the second time I'd been, and I had to drive down from Alice Springs. And instead of getting normal directions around turn left here, turn right here, the directions you would get from people that live there would be based on the landscape. So so your normal city driving is turn left here, turn right there, but it was when the landscape changes from this to this, you turn right at the fork in the road. So the landscape was, it's dry up there and originally quite flat. Or when you turn left from Marla, it's a very flat landscape, but it soon becomes really rugged and hilly. When it's not the heat of summer, it's green and lush and beautiful. Yeah.
This is something I think, a lot of people don't realise. And maybe just for those people listening along who don't kind of geographically know where we're talking, if you look down the centre of Australia, like literally divide Australia in half, there's almost a road which kind of drops down from north to south. That's quite crude. Let's say Alice Springs is somewhere smack in the middle of that line dividing Australia, and then Marla is probably like a third of the way down between the centre and the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you go out, and as you say, it's like this landscape where when it's dry, like it's kind of dusty and everything, but it's so green. That's what stunned me when we did our trip around Australia and drove through that part of the world.
Yeah, so I did that for a while, and that was
Wow.
fun. Loved it.
Yeah.
And you'd spend a couple of weeks there living in remote communities, staying in remote communities, and then at the end of the fortnight, we'd kind of pack up, drive out, stay a night in Marla, and that was a tiny little town of
Petrol station.
a petrol station, a pub, and a general store.
Yeah.
And that was like being in the big city for a night. So yeah, I had an amazing time and felt very lucky that a lot of the traditional owners there would be really generous around, sharing some of the spots as well. So yeah, very, very fortunate to have been able to do that.
What part of it rests with you the most? Like, if you're trying to think about how to frame this. It's like after you've had this experience, you've been to a music festival and you've got a song ringing in your ears. It's the flavour, right? The buzz of what's that vestige that rests with you?
Yeah, I think for me it was just that genuine sense of community and that genuine sense of connection to country and the stories that were shared with country. But I just think when we were working with young kids, getting them ready for the opportunities, just that concept of sharing. And it wasn't, in the communities I was working, it wasn't about one person working and looking after themselves. It was that, how do we look after our family and our elders and our parents? So I think that was something that was really special to me. Yeah, how it was really about looking after each other. I think that's something that you always take with you.
It must be kind of a strange experience coming in from the bush like that and then back into Adelaide.
Yeah.
And, you might walk down your street and your neighbours don't even say hello to you, right?
Yeah. Very different. And yeah, that concept of everybody looking out for each other was very special. And I think you also saw the barriers as well, being in such a remote part of Australia and all of the services that we take for granted living in cities.
That's true.
I think you start to realise some of the challenges that if you're in a remote location that you face into.
So it feels like we're getting close to international ed there.
Yeah.
So it's the education space. So then what was that kind of last step or two that got you where you are?
Yeah, so then...
And then to Melbourne. Made
Yeah.
terrible decision in Melbourne, but
Yeah,
so
well,
I'm from Sydney.
Sometimes when I look out my window and it's a grey sky, I do think, why did I move to Melbourne? But yeah, no, I do love Melbourne. Well,
Sorry, I've done
no. I'm not sure if I'm getting all of the order here of right of all of my jobs, but I had a couple of other roles, and interestingly, while I loved that job, I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And I remember looking at so my partner was sponsored by South Australia Police. And I remember looking at this, it was like a certificate that he had as part of that sponsorship. And it was the state government that sponsored their visas. And of course, coming over from the UK, you have no idea what state government is, what federal government is, what the difference. But I remember somebody had signed this form, which basically said, we sponsor you to come to South Australia. And I saw the name, Googled it, sent them an email, and within about 2 hours, that person emailed me back, and I'd explained that I was looking for a job, and she called me back, asked me to meet her the next day for a beer, and then offered me a job, just a temporary job, which was working for the state government, Immigration SA, whose job was to promote South Australia to expats in London, so trying to get Aussies back to Adelaide, and also to India and China. So that was kind of, then I decided to get into, okay, how do we promote Australia in overseas markets? And then I started my first job as an international recruitment coordinator at the University of Adelaide about 13 years ago
Nice.
now. So that was my very, very random journey. So, I mean, I didn't know it existed, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just kind of fell into it.
It's quite funny. How did you feel when you've gone you're just going to have a beer with someone and then suddenly there's a job that comes out of that?
Oh, that's
a great experience.
It was an amazing experience, and I will always remember that. And it just, again, when we were talking earlier, it's just that opportunity, right? Someone, when I think back to that person, when I nearly overstayed my visa, but one person made a difference. And I often think back to, I can remember her name, Robin Hanson, who responded to my email, met with me the next day, and then gave me the chance to work as a temp for a few weeks, met some great people, and then it kind of then steered me into a role that really focused on international and promoting Australia overseas.
So when did you move from Adelaide to Melbourne?
So I worked for the University of Adelaide for 3 years, and then just over 10 years ago, I finally made the move to Melbourne, which was really the goal all along. I love Adelaide. We ended up staying in Adelaide for 9 years. Fantastic. Miss lots about Adelaide, but I think the calling of Melbourne was always there for me. I'd spent 6 months there as a backpacker and fell in love with it, and always kind of wanted to get back to Melbourne. And
Oh, actually, I'm glad you mentioned the backpacking again. So I'm going to come back to that just because when you were talking about it to begin with, tell me about that trip. And I promise, sorry, this is the way I bounce. Like, I'm really keen to come back to the Melbourne stuff and your work. But tell me about that trip, like the East Coast trip. Yeah.
So it was, I think back, it was 2002. So I was just a young 22-year-old, flying over. And again, very unprepared. So, I was one of those classics that, didn't know Canberra was the capital of Australia before I landed, but just came over with, just £1,000 or £1,500 in my bank account, landed in Sydney, spent 3 months in Sydney doing the, Bondi Beach on Christmas Day, eating a burger. So I was one of those typical backpackers, bright pink, lying on the beach.
Nice.
So I think I was the stereotype when I arrived, and went into a shared house in Sydney on Harris Street. I remember it well. We had over 30 people living in a small terraced house in a cockroach infested
Ultimo.
In Ultimo. Yeah.
Wow. Just to geolocate that for people. So it's literally like centre of kind of Sydney, just on the fridge, really.
Yeah, and an amazing spot. I go past that in that area now, and I think, wow, it was pretty amazing space, but
would have been gritty back then, though.
Pretty gritty.
Gritty part of the city.
It was pretty gritty. Yeah. So there were all these English, Dutch, Spanish, 30 of us crammed into this tiny little house. But that was my base for 3 months. Loved it. Met some amazing people, and then with a couple of friends, gave us that opportunity to spend 2 or 3 months hopping on and hopping off all the way from Sydney up to Cairns. Yeah, I did the normal thing where you'd hand out leaflets in Hervey Bay for 3 hours a day to get free accommodation and a free meal.
Yeah, wow.
I just lived on, very little for a year.
Do you have an outstanding memory when you think about that whole road trip? What's the first blazing memory that comes to you? Could be a moment or a person or a place.
And I still feel this now. I think it's whenever you're in Australia, you're out of a city and you're in a dusty little outback town and you just meet somebody that you don't expect. And I think it's that friendliness that you would often encounter when you're in, places that, so remote and so far away. So I think a real outstanding memory for me would be in and around when we went through Flinders Ranges. So I think for those of you that don't know, so the Flinders Ranges then they're not the most remote parts of Australia, but stunning scenery. And then you'd often stop at a little country pub and just meet super, super friendly people. So I think the scenery was always amazing, but I think it was just the people that you meet along the way that are my enduring memories.
Yeah, nice. And so where are you I'm jumping all the way back to fast forward again. Where are you in Melbourne?
So I live in Port Melbourne.
Oh, that's such a great
So
part of the world.
Yeah, so I'm in a great part, close to everything, close to the water, got that little bit of edge to it as well. So I just live in a really old, small, tiny terraced house. Yeah, close to everything.
And tram straight into the city from there. That's a super good The reason I know Port Melbourne is when I started my first business, which was a study abroad, outbound study abroad provider called AIM Overseas. At the time, Tony Adams, who was one of the giants of the field, was living in Port Melbourne. And so when you start a business, of course, you're just asking everyone to sleep on their couch whenever you got to travel for work. And Tony very kindly Tony and his wife Pauline would host us in Port Melbourne. And so we'd walk up. And if you had to, because there was a bus that went all the way to Latrobe from there.
Oh, is that right?
There was a bus that went from Port Melbourne to Latrobe University. And I did that once. It was 3 hours.
Love it. Well, yeah, that would take about 3 hours. But I think what first attracted us to Port Melbourne was, I don't know if it still is, but it was the dog capital of Australia. So there's more dogs per capita than anywhere else. So yeah, we've got a dog, a very pampered Hungarian Vizsla. So yeah, we thought we wanted to be by the beach. We wanted to be close to the city. So yeah. It's a good spot. We love it.
Nice. What do you love about RMIT?
Oh,
so you've got a senior role. So at time of recording, head of future students, so big role, and a huge institution. And what I love about RMIT, dual sector, very innovative, international, very integrated with industry. To me, it's like this fascinating institution that has so many different facets. Sorry, No, I shouldn't have shot off like that.
No, really good question.
This podcast is about you. What do you like about RMIT?
No, so I joined RMIT 10 years ago, and I was one of those classic Gen X, I think I am, that every 3 years had moved around. And I've been at RMIT 10 years, and it's been an amazing journey. It's an incredible university, and it's incredibly complex, like many universities are. But yeah, it's dual sector. It's huge. We've got a massive global footprint. So we've got a campus in Vietnam that celebrates 25 years this year. We've been delivering programs in Singapore for decades. We've got dual award programs now in India. We've got a huge cohort of students. So when you mentioned that we were dual sector, I think a lot of people don't always realise just the size of the VE, domestic students that we have at RMIT. It's huge. So a total student population of close to 100,000. When you first join RMIT, and this sounds a bit mean, but I quite enjoy, if I have a new member of the team, watching them in those first couple of weeks where they've just got that dazed look, as in what the hell is going on here. And the volume is massive, but it's a university that wants to do things. It's innovative, and you have that license to take the world that you're part of into a certain direction. So that's what I love about a place. And yeah, some amazing people. Yeah, some great people.
What are you most excited about when you think about the work that's on your bucket, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so my role, I look after domestic and international future students, admissions, sales and conversion, and global mobility. And this probably might surprise you, but I think the thing that really excites me at the moment is actually the space of admissions. So my background is recruitment, but 3 years ago when I took on the role that I'm in now, that was when I looked after admissions as well. And I think there's some really exciting work that we're currently working on around admissions and how we can really change the way that admissions looks, particularly in the world of AI. So I think for us, it's really imagining how do we ensure that admissions is really at the center of everything that we do, and how do we ensure that experience lives up to expectations that students have. So I think for me and for us, the next 12 months will be an exciting time, we hope, in terms of the admissions space and how we start to think about that differently. And then the goal really around that is how do we then create an amazing service culture that supports often that trickier part of a journey for an international and a domestic student.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking, like, to me, it's like the pieces falling into place there. It intuitively makes sense. Okay, sales and marketing are very front end of that, but admissions is like this critical part of the user experience, and often, and I'm not pointing at anyone in particular here, but it's hard. Like, it's a hard space. It's confusing for perspectives, technical, time consuming, all of these things that are friction points. And as marketers and salespeople, we're thinking about friction points, and there suddenly you hit this big friction point. So to me, it makes complete sense. You make that better, you can really enhance the experience, which is kind of what we're here for, right?
I think, yeah, it's really important that in our jobs, you're always getting the foundations right. And then you can add the new and exciting and shiny stuff to support that as well. So I think admissions is the most critical area at the moment. If I think about all of the conversations we've been having the last couple of days around our NOSC allocations, NOSC exempt allocations, we've got in the domestic space, there's big change there in terms of the way that domestic caps are managed. And I think, yeah, if we get our systems right and we really embrace technology to help us do that, then I think that will pull out the winners of the next couple of years in terms of institutions. That's what I think is actually really exciting.
What about more broadly? Do you think about AI and its effects that it might have on the university experience in society? Is that something that kind of goes through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's mind-blowing. I'm so excited broadly about AI. And I just reflect on even just a story this morning. So we've got Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Business and Law with us. So we hosted a partner breakfast this morning, and he came to host it. And he talked about some AI initiatives that he's working on where, students are... So our students in our business programs have an AI CEO mentor who will sit side by side with a student and help them grow, but not only help them grow, the artificial intelligence will enable their virtual CEO to grow as well.
Wow.
So yeah, there's some amazing AI examples that I see pockets of across the university that kind of really bust that myth that AI will take our jobs. They will change our jobs, but yeah, it's just some exciting elements that we see around AI. And I think, yeah, probably what we're all grappling with is how do we look at that in a really holistic way and pull together a university-wide AI strategy, which an RMIT is.
And that's hard, I mean, massive institution. And as you're pointing out, like, there's so many opportunities in all these little pockets to do it. Like a micro example from my world, like, so I do YouTube, right? I like choosing a uni YouTube. And so when I've been doing videos, I've been to all the unis and all that kind of stuff. Great. But if I want to do a video about law at Griffith, well, in the past, I'd have to physically get on a plane and fly to Griffith and stand there to film my video. But now I've created my own digital avatar. And so I can, I still do the voice, still write my own scripts, and I can do the voice, but I can generate that video, which looks like I'm standing at Griffith to talk about Griffith. And it's not about being misleading. It's about making it feel more real for the actual user. It's really thinking about that end user and them being more delighted and engaged with that piece of content in order to get value from it. And that to me is just the most extraordinary, mind-blowing opportunity that we have here, is to be able to service the individual in their individual way.
Yeah, absolutely. As a group, in the area I work in, we've really started to think about all these little AI projects that we're all working on. How do we bring it together? Because it's so exciting and there's such a lot happening, but how do we stay focused? So yeah, we're kind of super excited about that.
Coming back to that question before, like the institutions, wrapping a strategy around that a real challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even this year, for part of my role is delivering our open day that we have for our domestic cohort. So every year we throw the doors open. We get 40,000+ students come into RMIT, and this year was the first year where we really thought about how do we embed the concept of AI. So we created a little space on campus, and again, it doesn't sit specifically in one school or one college or one program, but try and just connect students to what that AI experience might look like at RMIT. And again, what you see from that is people are really intrigued about AI, and students are interested in it, but they still want to touch and feel it and, come into a real space and test it. So that's the challenge, I think.
It's exciting, isn't it? With my marketing hat on, like the personalization and the engagement and the way you can hyper personalize those experiences is, and not just a digital marketing experience, but like an on-campus experience and education experiences that become more targeted. Like this virtual CEO, that's extraordinary, mind-blowing.
So I did ask my DVC, I was like, but are you at risk of being taken over by a virtual DVC? So
no.
Which is, he said no.
No.
But So lots of change. And I think, going back to your question about what do you love about RMIT, I think RMIT embraces change. And I think in our industry, right, we don't have a choice. And I think that keeps us all going.
Where do you enjoy most in the world? Like if you have to get on a plane and go somewhere, where do you enjoy most going to? Other than, let's say, than UK and home.
Yeah. I think it would be India. Yeah. So, been there many times. We've got a pretty large team now in India as well. So I always have that element of feeling a little bit at home when I get to India. And I think we often travel to new places and new cities and new locations. But when I get to particularly Delhi, I normally stay at the same hotel. We've got RMIT, we have an office there, so I can walk to work. And I often kind of just love that familiarity for a week. If I spend a week in Delhi of staying at the same spot. And growing up in Birmingham in the UK, where we had access to amazing Indian food, I just love to get to India and indulge myself in the food. And so I think India was probably
I've not been to India, so paint me a picture of that walk. Like literally, what it's like to walk out at the front of your hotel and walk to the office. Like describe that walk for me.
I mean, everybody says this, but I think it's the chaos of Delhi that I love. And whether you're walking to the office at 8 o'clock in the morning or you're walking at, 1 a.m., the streets are always alive. And I think it's that hustle that there's always people, and you kind of see all these people on their little journey. And I think that's the energy really, really captivates you. So when I walk from the hotel I stay at to the office, it's a really short walk. So I think it's less than 15 minutes. And you'll pass little markets serving street food, again, regardless of the time that you're walking past. You'll have a couple of little street dogs that just run past you and give you a little sniff or a little dodgy look. You'll step up a curb that's, 50, 60 centimeters high. And then there's a shopping mall that, where you could be, once you're in the shopping mall, you could be in London or Melbourne, all the kind of high street brands that we have here in Australia. And then I'll walk next door and there's our office. So it's an amazing place. I think the energy is something that just takes hold of you.
I like those places where you can see the breadth of society. I think that's such a healthy thing to experience. Maybe it's also why like somewhere like RMIT kind of resonates for me too. It's just like you've got such breadth there. Like you see so much of society from the very top to I don't want to say bottom, but not what education is about. But you see the breadth. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that I love about RMIT is all of the trades that we do. So the university does a huge amount of work in the non-traditional areas that we often think about, particularly in international education. We're very focused on higher education and VE as well. But, you see where the university will work really closely with industry on some of those big statewide infrastructure projects and how RMIT students are kind of embedded in some of those projects. And then you'll randomly chat to one of the trainers in our VE space who, travels to Bangladesh a couple of times a year to work on projects to help uplift some of that capability in countries. So yeah, you see at RMIT a lot of difference in terms of the work that we do to support people in their ambition. And ultimately, the history of the university is really interesting as well. So it was set up as
the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology.
Yeah. And it was set up, really with one thing in mind, to get people skilled up, to get into a job. That ethos really remains. And that's really a good reminder when we do the job that we do, and that our role is really to give young people the chance to find the job that they want and that can help them in their life. So I think that's in the DNA at the institution, and that's a good reminder of what we're all doing.
So you've gone from, this bus ride out into the desert, near Mala, and now very senior role in an enormous institution. I don't even know how many people are in your tree in the org chart, but probably many, many, many. Have you reflected on, the journey from that sort of simplicity in one way of, interacting just with the human there to suddenly being the human at the top that has to manage all of this complexity and these relationships and all of the work?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I haven't really. I mean, yeah, I've got a large team at RMIT, so a team of about 180, including our team kind of outside of Australia as well. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I think what I love about the work that we do is, when we were talking earlier about that walk to the office when I'm in Delhi, yes, I've got a big job, there's lots to do, I've got a big team, but you're never too far removed from actually what you're trying to do. So I think it's really important in my role that, I do get out and I do the school visits, and I still visit our agent networks and just and meet those kids. And, when you are running an event in Delhi and we're inviting kids to an event, that kind of see in their eyes the excitement. And again, going back to when I was working in the APY Lands, it's just how do we create that little spark in people that just gets them excited. So I think, you just got to hold on to that. When you're navigating the bureaucracy that you often do at university, it's kind of, there's a nice reminder every now and again about we're in a good space doing things for young people.
The storyteller in me is just like, that's the perfect moment to wrap up and close a circle. But I just want to ask one more question about that journey. Was there a step between, on the journey from, and so I'm just picking that as one early experience in your career through to where you are now. Was there a step that seemed somewhere along there that seemed larger than the others? So, maybe being, your first manager's role, managing a team of 5 or 6 to suddenly managing a team of 50, or was there a step in there that was felt larger than the others?
Good question. I think I'll answer that, but I also reflect on my leadership journey. And I think when I first started at RMIT, I was very fortunate in that my manager then, so someone called Jackie Taylor, kind of
Jackie Taylor, oh my God. Where's she? Sorry, sidebar. Where's she now?
She is working, I can't remember the name of the organisation, but I think it's Western Futures, so in Geelong.
Yep.
Yeah. And she really gave me that license to be brave. And shape the team and the direction in my area then, in the way that I wanted to, in the way that I wanted to. So I think that was definitely not the hardest moment, but a really important moment for me, in that you're new in, we trust you, go for it. But then I think that the step up that felt the biggest was when I went from having international to also having domestic.
Okay.
I think particularly growing up outside of Australia, it took me a while to get my head around the way that the VTAC
so complex
works, and the pop polls and the rounds and change of preference, and why preference 1 to 3 is more important than 4 to 8. So that probably took me, I think, the longest time to really wrap my head around. But now I enjoy that equally as much as the international space. And what I've tried to do at RMIT is really knit together how we think about international and how we think about domestic and take the best from both. So that was definitely the biggest step.
I'm laughing because it really resonates for me. I started this thing, Choosing Your Uni, like originally it was just a YouTube channel and now it's kind of grown. And recently we've been going through that too. It's like, but every state is different. And when you start to get into the weeds of it, you're just like, this is nuts. You're such a small country. And yet, like, you've got these duplication, and it's so confusing. It's like learning a completely new language, sideways from what you knew before.
Yeah, so I have a huge amount of sympathy for students who, for example, are in China and doing the ATAR with one of the states and then navigating their way through results release and applying and changing preferences and ending up here. So that was definitely the biggest step, but a fun one. And I feel very lucky to be in that space as well.
Excellent. Tom Gifford, it's been awesome chatting with you on Global Horizons. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Global Horizons podcast, consider subscribing to our newsletter. Search for Global Horizons podcast and then just pop in your email address, and that way you will never miss out on all of the critical international education news that you need to stay up to date with. This episode has been produced on Garrigal Land in Sydney. Our video and audio editor is Len Zamora, and I'm your host, Rob Malicki. Have an awesome day. See you in the next episode.